Hey, what is up, everybody?
Welcome back to Mile Higher Podcast, episode 129. Today we are doing the Scott and Laci Peterson case, which we decided to cover because there's been some huge news in this case. Scott Peterson's death sentence has been overturned.
Yeah, it's huge news.
Yeah.
And
this is a lot of mixed opinions on that.
Absolutely.
Sure.
This is a very controversial case. There's a lot of people that think he did it. There's a lot of people that don't. We're going to dive into the whole thing and we're going to give you our thoughts and opinions on it because I think we have some different thoughts and opinions about this case. So I'm very excited to cover this, and it's just one of those cases that will leave you kind of, I don't know, dumbfounded at the end, just in general. Like you just really don't know.
Really wanting answers.
Yeah,
it's just one of those that you're just like, oh, I wish I knew what happened so bad.
I know. It's definitely one of those cases. So that is what we're covering today, but we also got a few news topics that are very, very important that we need to cover as well. But also I wanted to thank our sponsors for today, stamps.com and Candid. It's rough times out here on YouTube especially. So unfortunately, they don't like a lot of our content. So
they don't seem to like us.
Yeah.
In general, on all our
starting to feel
channels.
A little personal at this point. I'm feeling like
even our new podcast, me and Janelle's The Sesh. If you haven't heard it yet, we have 4 episodes out now, and 3 out of the 4, including our trailer, are already demonetized.
Literally,
and they're
why?
very
they should not be getting
personal.
demonetized.
Yeah, there's no reason. They're really light listening.
Yeah,
it should not be demonetized. So
not only that,
it is feeling personal.
Some of our recent episodes, like MK Ultra and stuff, they came back and said there was like all this wild stuff in there that wasn't in there, and we're like,
guys,
what?
they said there was nudity in it.
Yeah, adult content in there. I was like, what?
Absolutely not.
We were like, Janelle, what the hell? What'd you put in there?
Yeah, we were like,
sorry,
what
guys.
did you edit in? Yeah,
I don't know. It's honestly crazy. I try and think about when I'm editing the podcast, like, oh, would this slide, would this not? But then of course, you never know. Some things that shouldn't be going through are fine. And then some things that should, be monetized or not at all. They're totally flagged. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like you can never tell.
Josh has had several episodes on Lights Out that we thought for sure were going to get demonetized, and they haven't. And Lights Out has done fairly well with that.
Yeah, and we've had some that I thought for sure after manual review would be confirmed not advertiser friendly, and then they got flipped green. I was like, okay, the
system
clear.
is so messed up.
What is going on? What do they have? A bunch of monkeys running the
Seriously.
review system over there at YouTube?
Honestly, it's starting to feel that way. And just so you know, we're not just complaining about it because we don't have ads, whatever. We have our own sponsors, and that gives us the freedom to say whatever we want. But at the same time, it really limits our content. It severely limits how many people it gets out to. Right. About half the views will come in on demonetized content. Yeah. So it's very just disheartening and frustrating.
Yeah. And YouTube is a huge part of our show. We started on YouTube, and that's where, obviously with podcasts, a lot of you just listen to it, but we also have a lot of people that only watch it on YouTube as well. So
I personally love watching podcasts. So that's why I wanted to offer a visual version, but it's really disheartening that this platform just is so censoring to the point where, our last episode on the sesh was demonetized. It was about school and our experiences with school. It's just ridiculous. So we really hope that Spotify ends up doing video hosting. Yeah,
I hope there's going to be a new platform that has some sort of monetization built into it. Because to be totally transparent, that's a huge part of our, company's revenue. That's how we pay employees. It's that's a big deal to us if our content is being censored and demonetized. So, and we're not the only ones out there that are dealing with this, but it's impacted us heavily, and it's just really annoying. And they gotta figure it out because it's just getting ridiculous at this point.
I'm sure this one will be demonetized as well.
Probably.
What can you do? I try not to get too upset about it after a while.
Yeah, I'm over here Kendall, our podcast is getting demonetized. She's like, welcome to YouTube, Janelle.
Welcome to my career the last 5 years. It's slowly gotten worse and worse and worse. It's crazy.
I just wish they would take a different approach to advertising and things like that. Look at TV, TV has tons of content that's advertised and stuff.
Oh, I know. Yeah, there's a whole network for crime content on TV with plenty of advertisers doing just fine. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. People aren't babies. They can decide what they want to see and make their own decisions. It's just ridiculous. So
then
we'll stop. We'll start. We could
go on and on about this all day, but let's just go ahead and jump right into the first news story. So there was unfortunately another Fort Hood soldier who was found deceased. Sergeant Elder Fernandez. He had actually been missing for more than a week before he was actually found dead hanging from a tree last Tuesday, August 25th.
Really scary and upsetting.
So this comes after, Vanessa Guillen and that whole thing. So we're starting to wonder what's going on at Fort Hood, because clearly there are some issues there. And as we dig deeper into Elder's life and his experience at the base, it seems like there's some serious misconduct coming from superior officers and people that are supposed to be in charge, whether it's sexual assault or harassment. All of these sort of factors, I believe, led to Elder Fernandez committing suicide, taking his own life. So
yeah, it sounds like he was being harassed. It sounds like he didn't have anyone to go to, which is the same thing. Vanessa was worried that if she came forward with what was happening to her, that she would just be punished. She said she knew tons of other people that had happened to. I think the culture is just extremely messed up there. And I don't know why Fort Hood is having so many incidents, but clearly someone needs to investigate that. An independent investigation needs to be done.
Yeah, that's definitely a good place to start. And I wonder, I'm not really familiar with how the military works specifically, but it seems like they almost need like an HR department, like at these bases, or like some type of safe place that soldiers can go to complain about superiors. Because if the only way that you can deal with harassment or somebody doing something to you is to go to a person above you, well, go to your boss. That'd be like going to your boss and saying, hey, like, I'm being harassed by you. What if they're the one harassing you?
Yeah, right.
Or you go to your boss's boss.
Well, that's what Vanessa's family is trying to fight for with the I Am Vanessa Guillen bill, is for soldiers to have a place to report that type of stuff to a third party that is unbiased, so that way they can feel safe and something can actually be done about it.
Right. So an investigation is conducted. Because at most companies, most corporations, if you have a complaint about a superior, you can, call the 1-800 number for them or email.
That's the idea.
And then maybe
that's not always how it is.
Yeah,
HR is extremely corrupt as it is too.
I know. But in some places it does work. For example, when I worked at Best Buy, they had a very good system. And it was one of the things they told you like day one was like, if you ever have any problems with anybody, this is the number you call. We take these very seriously. And I saw incidents where people went that avenue and, whether it's supervisors or managers got reprimanded for things that they were doing. Because I think when, superiors or managers feel like nobody's watching them or their boss doesn't care or their boss is in on it too, then there's no accountability.
Yeah. And they feel like they have some type of power.
And it's especially sad when you have people that are literally serving our country and they are at risk for all of these things when they really shouldn't be. Because they should be safe. It should be a safe place.
Shouldn't be worried about being harassed at your job to the point where you're going to, commit suicide.
Right. But
and do we even know that's for sure what happened? There's been so many suicides this year, that have been hangings, and I question a lot of them.
Yeah. Well, apparently the Temple police say they do not suspect foul play.
Okay.
And they believe that it was suicide, although the autopsy reports have not come back yet. So obviously I think that's probably going to confirm it, but you never know. You never know. And clearly there's a bigger issue here. There's been another 7 people that have died as a result of either activities they participated in on the base or they just happened to be working on the Fort Hood base this year that have died.
It's actually 9 of them total.
9?
Yeah.
So that's a lot. And I think that warrants definitely an investigation into how they're running things, who's in charge here, why are these things happening. So a startling statistic, though, that was done by a survey of Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine personnel in 2018 found about 20,500 instances of unwanted sexual conduct, which was a 38% increase from 2016. And about 6% of women in the military endured some form of sexual assault, and almost 1% of men were victimized. So it seems like the military does have a problem there that they need to address. And hopefully through Vanessa's bill and others that we can hopefully get some accountability there. Because I feel like the military oftentimes operates with no oversight, from any sort of outside agency. They literally can do what they want on those bases. It's like they have their own little government there.
Yeah.
They have their own police. They have their own situation
That seems to be the mentality, yeah.
And so they're, they try to hide things that happen there. So hopefully they do something about this, because this is just getting out of hand at this point.
And I'm glad more people are hearing about it because of all of this. You know, it's bringing attention to Fort Hood and just corruption in the military in general.
Right.
So that's good.
Absolutely. So the next story is about Jacob Blake, which has been in the headlines recently for obvious reasons. So on August 23rd, a 29-year-old black male named Jacob Blake was shot by police. They shot at him 7 times, and he actually was hit 4 times in the back.
And there's video of it. There's actually 2 video recordings, I believe, from 2 different cell phones. We don't have body cam. Did you know that? They don't have body cams in this area. Kenosha. What the hell? Who still doesn't have body cams? I guess they're not even planning to get them until 2022. You'd think that'd be so vital.
I'm just surprised there's not like a national mandate to have all departments have body cams. It just seems like a basic thing they should have already have.
Yeah. But luckily there was 2 cell phone videos captured of this. And so I'm sure many of you have seen the video of it. It's very upsetting.
It really is. So apparently Jacob was attempting to de-escalate a fight between 2 women, I believe that were family members potentially, that they were having an argument with. And at one point, the police were called, and one of the women told police that Jacob wasn't supposed to be there and that he had taken the person that called's keys and refused to give them back. So when officers were on the way, they knew that they were dealing with somebody that was wanted. He did have a warrant for his arrest.
He's been having some domestic violence calls actually before this. Leading up to it, the police have been called a few times.
Yeah, it looks like his warrant was based on charges of 3rd-degree sexual assault, trespassing, and disorderly conduct in connection with these domestic calls that they've had in the past. When officers arrived, they said that Jacob wasn't cooperating with them. And so as a result, they tried to get him under control, and they even used tasers on him. A bystander who recorded a video of the incident told reporters that he heard police yelling, "Drop the knife." And after this initial scuffle, Jacob was able to break away from the officers and then walk to the driver's side of his vehicle. And then Jacob opened the driver's side door, leaned in to check on his 3 sons. And this is when police grabbed him and then fired 7 shots towards Jacob's back.
So obviously there's been a lot of debate over the fact that Jacob had all these previous things and he could have been violent. And people wonder, does that make the police warranted for shooting him? And I just don't understand how that really has anything to do with it. It doesn't matter what previous things someone has had. You should never, first of all, we were just talking about, you should never shoot someone in the back as a police officer. That's
like number 1 rule. As far as what I've learned and been told from police is that you never shoot somebody in the back. You need to see the weapon and they need to be making a threatening or aggressive advancement towards you with that weapon in some way for you to be justified to shoot them. So when they're completely turned around, and obviously you can't see his hands, but you if he's completely turned around and his back is to you, he's not a threat to you.
Exactly. He's not coming at you.
You can't just sit there and unload 7 shots into the back of him because you presume that he's going to turn around. And first of all, it wasn't like they thought he had a gun because they had already made contact with him initially. So it was a knife that was the situation here. And that's even worse because with a knife, he would need to be coming at you with the knife for you to be justified to shoot him at all. So what police are saying from their perspective is that there's a point in time when they're shooting him in the back that it appears that he's reaching or he has something in his hand that appears to look like a knife. And that is why the shooting was justified.
Well, maybe they could have, if they really were that concerned and, worried he was going to possibly kill them or hurt them, why wouldn't they just shoot him 1 time in the arm or the leg? Why did they need to shoot him 7 times? I don't understand that. Because
they teach you that, unfortunately. They teach you to shoot to kill. You're not taught to shoot for a non-lethal shot. Like when you actually pull out your gun, the only purpose for that gun is to shoot to kill somebody. There's no other reason to do it. It's not to try to maim them or try to dismantle them with your gun. That's why they have the less than lethal options. That's why they have the tasers, is that if it escalates above a taser, then you have the judgment call to make whether or not you need to shoot and kill this person.
Well, it seems like the wrong judgment call then.
Yeah, it was.
He did not need to bring out his gun.
Well, the force wasn't even matched evenly. If he had reached into his waistband and pulled a gun, and as he's pulling around, the officers see the gun, then I see a justification to shoot 7 shots at him, because the officer could be killed by him at that point. But the fact that he potentially has a knife, he would have to turn all the way around, proceed to go at the officer at that point, for the officer then to be justified to shoot him at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I will never understand officers that shoot people in the back while they're doing something else or trying to go away from them. Remember there's that other video a few years back of an officer shooting an unarmed black male who was running away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just shot him like 10 times or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
completely against protocol. Like, that's not even remotely.
So okay. I don't understand how anyone can defend this, especially with just being like, well, he had all these other charges and things. That does not justify being shot 7 times in the back. No. Period. You can't argue it.
No, and what I don't understand is there's multiple officers there.
Right.
So many of these incidents, there's multiple people there. So why aren't they it's 3 against 1. You guys can't physically take this one guy and get him under control. Like, it's not like this was a one-on-one fight even. Like, there's multiple police there at that point.
Yeah.
So there's just no excuse. And this is just another example of the officer made a bad judgment call, and unfortunately he needs to be held responsible for it, because now Jacob Blake is paralyzed as a result of this shooting. And not only that, his kids had to witness him being shot by police, and just the damage that is going to, the trauma that he's going to deal with as a result of what I think is a scared police officer. Probably he's just you're in it's a hard job. I get it. Like, I get, you can't, we're all humans. We make mistakes. And, in that moment, you could be scared, heated, but at the same time, you signed up for that job. You got to be prepared for the consequences if you make the wrong judgment call here. And unfortunately, there's this culture of, police covering for other police. And, I think there's a lot of corruption with the internal review process. And so, cause it's not always the case that an outside agency reviews it. Their own internal affairs department reviews the incident. And obviously no police department wants to have an officer on record who's murdered somebody. So oftentimes it gets kind of swept under the rug, or they say it's justified. And I think in this case, they're going to come back and say this is justified. And I don't think they're going to press charges against the officer that shot him, unfortunately. Wow. Well, people are going to be angry. They are. That's why there's protests. That's why it's only going to be more. So, so much so that the NBA, they boycotted the playoffs games the other night. Yeah. They didn't even play. Wow. Because they've just had enough. LeBron James tweeted out, like, we need change. Like, this is ridiculous. Yeah. And I don't get it. And the police just seem to have a very aggressive stance. The officers, all these social media officers that are out there, not all of them, but most of them are saying that this was justified. And all you got to do is look at the footage, and clearly he was reaching, and, we're allowed to, shoot somebody if they're reaching for a weapon regardless. So there you go. But from a outside law enforcement perspective, all we saw was a unjustified police shooting that ended up, luckily he lived, but at the same time, he's paralyzed now. It's going to affect the rest of his life because of this incident. So, but I do think the reason why this escalated is because he did have warrants on him, and he did have the charges pending, but still, which is the reason for the escalation. But, but it's still not justified. That the end action was not justified. Right. But that's what the police are saying, is that they responded accordingly to his charges and to the fact that he was, resisting arrest. Well, I think if you haven't seen it yet, you should look up his sister speaking on this. She really blew me away. Her words were extremely powerful. She just did, like a news interview. The press conference. Yeah, press conference is what the word I'm looking for. And it was really meaningful. We'll link it below if you want to check it out. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing, and the reason why people are so upset too, is because literally in the same week, we have this 17-year-old white male nut job, Kyle Rittenhouse, roaming the streets with an AR-15 illegally. Thinks he's a militia. Thinks he's like backing up the boys in blue or something. And he's out there shooting protesters. And the police literally let him flee. He walked right by, like the police don't see him as a threat. Video. They don't see him as a threat. He's walking around with an AR-15.
Yeah, he has a weapon. Why didn't they shoot him in the back 7 times?
Yeah, what the fuck?
And that's
I'm so sick of this.
And that's exactly why there's Black Lives Matters, because it's so obvious that you're privileged if you're white.
Absolutely.
And that's the way the police look at it too, clearly. This is just another example. So yeah.
Well, I hope it doesn't get too violent, the protests, because I know Jacob Blake's mother specifically was really upset about that. She doesn't want it being done in his name. And I get that. So I don't know.
It's just, God, this year has just been absolutely crazy.
It really has. It has.
One thing after another. Every week there's something like this happening, and it just feels like we're moving in slow motion almost. Like
sometimes it does feel like that.
And our government's just such a mess. There's nothing being done. There's no changes happening. There's nothing being taken seriously. And it just continues. It's just like, when is this going to end? When are we going to actually get some change? So, man, yeah, I mean, I don't even know what else to say, because this is just getting ridiculous at this point.
I know, it's really, honestly, it's depressing.
But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the case of Scott and Laci Peterson. We've got a lot to cover here.
Yes, yeah, we have a lot of opinions here.
As we slowly adjust to a new normal, we still need to be smart about how we do business. Luckily, there's Stamps.com to make things easier. Stamps.com has been a huge help to our business because it allows me to print any postage that I need for any package 24/7 from the safety and comfort of my own home office. And it helps me avoid the crowds at the post office, the long lines, and with everything going on, obviously the last thing I want to do is go stand in a line at the post office. What I also love about Stamps.com is the fact that they now offer UPS services with discounts up to 62% and no residential surcharges. And best of all, if you use Stamps.com, you will get great discounts too. 5 cents off every stamp and up to 62% off USPS and UPS shipping rates. Right now, our listeners can get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale without any long-term commitment. Just go to Stamps.com. Click on the microphone at the top of the homepage and type in Mile Higher. Again, that's Stamps.com and enter Mile Higher. So let's go ahead and start by talking about Scott Peterson and a little bit about his background and family life. So Scott Peterson was born on October 24th, 1972, and he grew up in a large working class family in San Diego, California. His father, Lee Peterson, worked for a trucking company and then started his own crate packaging business, while his mother, Jackie Latham, owned a boutique shop. The couple had a combined 6 kids from previous partners when Scott was born, and as a kid, Scott loved to play golf, and by junior high, he could even beat his dad, so he was actually pretty good. In fact, in high school, he was on the golf team with Phil Mickelson, which if you don't know who Phil Mickelson is, he's probably one of the greatest golfers of all time. He's like a professional champion in golf, so that's pretty impressive. And actually, Scott and Phil actually both enrolled at Arizona State University. And Scott was frustrated that he had to compete with Phil. I would be frustrated too if I was him trying to play against Phil Mickelson. But one night he took a teammate named Chris Couch out drinking. And when Chris's father found out what had happened, that his son was hungover after the night out, he told the golf coach, and Scott actually got kicked off of the team. Soon after this incident, though, Scott transferred to Cuesta College in San Luis Obispo. He then transferred again to California Polytechnic State University and ended up majoring in agricultural business. He did very well in his classes and gained the favor of many of his professors, but he still dreamed of a career as a professional golfer. While going to school, Scott also worked as a waiter at a restaurant called Pacific Cafe. This is where he actually met Laci Denise Rocha, a fellow Cal Poly student who came into the restaurant to visit a friend.
Laci was born on May 4th, 1975. Her parents are named Sharon and Dennis Rocha, and they were high school sweethearts, actually, who ran a dairy farm in Escalon, California. They had Laci's older brother, Brent, in 1971. Laci was actually named after a girl that her parents knew in high school. And despite their long history together, Sharon and Dennis divorced when Laci was barely a toddler. Sharon moved the kids to Modesto, California, and married a man named Ron Gransky. When she got remarried, Laci was 2 years old. So she really grew up with Ron as her father figure. Well, one of her father figures. But Laci and Brent continued visiting and working on the farm with their dad, so they still maintained a relationship with him as well. He also remarried, and Laci gained a stepbrother who's named Nathan Hazard, and eventually a half-sister named Amy Woodward. Laci loved working on the farm. She really liked nature in general. She's a Taurus, so she loves plants and being outside.
Gardening and all that.
Yep. She loved, to garden with her mom. She was really well liked in high school. She seemed like such a nice person. I think that's what makes this case so interesting to people too, is she's just so captivating for some reason. She seemed like such a nice human.
Yeah, and she's absolutely beautiful too.
Yeah, she's very beautiful.
Inside and out.
Mm-hmm. She enrolled in Cal Poly to study ornamental horticulture, so really into plants actually.
Yeah, seriously. I wonder what classes are like for horticulture.
That'd be cool. I'm sure it's really so interesting.
Yeah.
I would love it.
You could use a few classes in horticulture.
Yeah, I could. When she met Scott Peterson in 1994 at the Pacific Cafe, Laci felt an instant connection. She sent him her phone number and told her mom that she had actually met her future husband.
So it's kind of like sparks flew that first time they met. Yeah. Like they almost knew that they were kind of
like it.
Made for each other.
Mm-hmm. And after only 2 years of dating, Scott and Laci moved in together. Scott decided to kind of put aside his dream of being this professional golfer and become a professional businessman instead and a family man. Laci graduated a year before Scott, and they got married in summer of 1997 in August at Sycamore Mineral Springs Resort. Their wedding was beautiful. I love her wedding dress.
The pictures are really nice.
Yeah. She has a beautiful smile.
Yeah. I mean, they look like a very happy, loving couple for sure.
They definitely look that way. Scott continued with his senior year of college while Laci started working. But during his senior year, Scott had at least 2 affairs. He had told the first woman that he was single and had never been married. And during the affair, the woman walked into the couple's bedroom and saw Scott and Laci together in bed. And that's how she learned that he was married, and how Laci also learned that he was cheating on her.
Oh my God. That must have been traumatizing. Like, geez.
I know. And like, I don't know. I think every person is different. Like for me, I don't know if I could ever continue on. I guess I've never been cheated on, so it's hard for me to be in that position and say what I would do. But I can't imagine continuing on a relationship and trusting someone after that.
Especially really like if we were in bed and some woman just like walked into our room and like,
we would
Josh,
be so done.
You'd be like,
yeah, we would be done so fast. But anyway, they had worked it out and decided to stay together. But it didn't end there. Obviously, there was another affair. Scott told the second woman that he was getting a divorce when they started dating. And she had no reason to doubt him until they were together at their graduation ceremony in June of 1998. Laci walked up to Scott and put a lei around his neck. And up until that point, the other woman believed that Laci was out of the picture. But anyway, like I said, they stayed together through all of this. And after Scott graduated, he and Laci decided they wanted to start a business together. Scott's parents actually thought it was a bad investment, but they decided to open a sports bar called The Shack in San Luis Obispo. The business actually improved for a while, but by the time it hit year 2000, they decided they were ready to start a family together. So they sold their business and bought a 3-bedroom house instead in an upscale neighborhood of Modesto. Scott started working as the West Coast sales rep for Trade Corp USA, selling fertilizer and chemical nutrients and irrigation systems to large farms and horticulturists. And he made a nice living of around $5,000 per month.
Yeah, which is not bad at all.
No. Yeah. Laci worked as a substitute teacher and worked hard to keep a nice home for Scott. She liked entertaining friends and cooking large meals. In early 2002, Laci was pregnant with their first baby, and she was elated. She often talked about it with her mom, how excited she was for her and Scott's future family and just to have a baby. I mean, she was really, really determined to be a mom her whole life. So this whole time in her life was really exciting for her. So on the outside, everything seemed kind of perfect for them.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Scott is definitely doing some shady shit. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So in October, Scott actually went to a trade convention. And while he was there, he met a woman named Shawn Sibley. And they ended up spending some time together. And Scott told her that he was single, joking that his name tag should say, quote, horny bastard, to help him find women to hook up with.
Why would that help you? If I saw that, I'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Oh, damn. It says horny bastard. Well, then come here. Yeah. Like, ew.
Yeah, seriously. That's very weird. But it just goes to show where his mind was at. But Sean decided to set Scott up with her friend, Amber Frey. Amber was a massage therapist and a single mom from Fresno, and they met in mid-November. The two hit it off and started dating. And as far as Amber knew, she was dating a successful, handsome, single man with no attachments or baggage. And they saw each other at least 4 separate times, which I can imagine on each of those 4 times, he definitely was probably intimate with her during those times.
I mean, most likely a few of them at least, yeah. And Amber was really into Scott so far. I mean, they'd had a couple of dates and she was really enjoying everything. But then on December 9th, he told her something kind of weird. He said that he had lost his wife, and this would be the first Christmas without her since she died, which is really intense. I mean, she felt really bad for him and had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously this is not true. So at some point, Laci found out about the affair. She was nearly 7 months pregnant when she found out and furious at Scott. Oh my gosh, I would kick his ass out so fast. 7 months pregnant. How disrespectful.
Yeah. Why is she staying with him? I wonder.
Laci's due date was in mid-February 2003, and they had already decided on a name for their baby boy. His name was going to be Connor. The week before Christmas, Laci and Scott decided to spend a 3-day weekend with Scott's parents in Carmel, California. Also, sometime around mid-December of that year, Scott had registered a fishing boat with the Department of Motor Vehicles. He stored the boat in a warehouse in Modesto that he used to conduct business for Trade Corp. Laci went to visit the warehouse after returning from their little trip, so she most likely saw this new boat. Then on December 23rd, Scott and Laci's housekeeper, Margarita Nava, came to clean the house. She noticed that Laci was tired, but she really thought nothing of it because, she was so late in her pregnancy. She's 7 months along. And then later that day around 5:45 p.m., Laci and Scott decided to go see Laci's sister Amy at the salon where she works. Amy gave Scott a haircut, and as they talked, Amy said she needed to pick up a fruit basket that she bought for her grandfather for Christmas. Scott had planned to play golf the next day in the same neighborhood and offered to pick it up for her. And after the haircut, Laci and Scott went home. Laci talked to her mom on the phone around 8:30 p.m., but that evening would actually be the last time that Sharon would speak to her daughter and the last time that Amy saw her sister. So the next morning was Christmas Eve 2002. Laci woke up and she had cereal for breakfast because she was pregnant, so she kind of got nauseous in the mornings. Her and Scott hung out that morning and watched Martha Stewart. Scott was getting ready to go fishing that day. And that day, her plan was to just bake some Christmas cookies and then walk their dog. Pretty mellow day. They had a golden retriever named Mackenzie, and she normally took him to a park near their house.
And this is as far as we know. This is not, we have no way to officially, this is according to Scott, by the way, too, because obviously the only people that know what they did was her and Scott.
Right.
Scott's plan for the day was to go spend the morning fishing, and he had actually packed the car that morning and headed out around 10 a.m. So at some point, Laci leaves the house and then takes her dog Mackenzie for a walk, and dozens of witnesses say they saw Laci walking her dog between 9:30 and 10:30 a.m. that morning. However, 2 neighbors claim that they found Mackenzie the golden retriever wandering the neighborhood alone, and then returned her to Scott and Laci's backyard. The first neighbor was named Karen Servas, and she saw Mackenzie around 10:30 a.m. She then led Mackenzie back to Scott and Laci's house and left her in the backyard. A second neighbor, an unnamed woman, claimed she found Mackenzie attached to a muddy leash sometime that morning, and when she brought the dog back to Scott and Laci's backyard, she said she didn't notice anything unusual about the yard or the house. Also that morning, the neighborhood postman was delivering mail, and Mackenzie always barked when the postman came close to the house. But today, he noticed it was quiet, and the timestamp on his scanner matches up with when the other neighbors say they saw a pregnant woman who looked like Laci walking a dog. Scott returned from fishing that afternoon, and no one was home, but Laci's 1996 Land Rover Discovery was in the driveway where it usually was. Scott saw Mackenzie in the backyard and brought her inside. After Scott took off his wet clothes and put them in the wash, he then showered and got dressed like it was any other day. And at 5:15 p.m., Scott called his mother-in-law Sharon and told her Laci had never came home. Within half an hour of the call, Laci's stepfather Ron called the police and reported her missing. So that to me is interesting that Scott didn't like call the police right away and be like, my wife's missing. She didn't come back from her walk.
Can you judge someone based on the way that they act?
Right. His actions don't reflect what most of us would consider a normal person to do in this situation. Like if I came home and I knew you had gone on a walk by yourself with our dogs.
Yeah. And Oakley just like turned up by himself, you'd be freaking out.
The dogs are in the yard, but you're not in the house and your car's there.
Yeah.
I would immediately be alarmed and call the police and start freaking out, honestly. But Scott seems to do kind of the opposite. So after the police were called, 2 police detectives were dispatched to go to Scott and Laci's home that night. So when the police arrived, and again, there was a patrol officer that made it to the house at first. I believe his name was Officer Spurlock. And then obviously the detectives, John Bueller and Alan Brocchini, also came, and they all questioned Scott about, what was going on and what he had been doing that morning. And what's interesting is there's definitely some, I guess, controversy there, or potentially Scott Peterson's side says that there's a false narrative put out that he lied to officers saying that he went golfing that morning. When
some sources say that.
Some sources say that, but I think the reality is that he did tell police that he went fishing that morning.
If you look at their website, scottpetersonappeal.org, they have it all listed of how many people he told that he was actually fishing that day, including the officer. So I'm not sure. I mean, a lot of false narratives have gone out about this case. That's been a big problem. There's lots of misinformation. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case.
So after questioning Scott for a bit, the police then searched the house, and that's when they found Laci's purse in a closet, and inside they also found her wallet, keys, and sunglasses. So by finding those things, clearly she didn't go anywhere, probably on her own accord, if she did disappear at this point, because who leaves without their wallet and keys?
No, she wouldn't have done that.
Right. In the dining room, the table was elaborately set for Christmas dinner the next day. And when they searched the kitchen, they found a phone book on the counter, and it was open to a full-page ad for a defense lawyer.
That's interesting.
Scott also told police that he left a voicemail for Laci when he was fishing. So we'll play that for you.
Hey, beautiful. I won't be able to get to the Villa Farms to get that basket for Papa. I was hoping you would get this message and go on out there. I'll see you in a bit, sweetie. Love you. Bye.
So right off the bat, police were very suspicious of Scott because his wife, his pregnant wife, was missing with their child, and he had this very, very calm demeanor about him. He really didn't seem upset. He didn't really seem like anything. I mean, he was pretty unemotional about all of this. So most police are going to become, based on their experience, they're going to say, okay, most people in this type of situation would have at least some sort of emotion about their wife being missing and worried and wanting to help in any way, shape that they can. And that just wasn't the case with Scott. That same night, Detective Brocchini went with another officer to Scott's warehouse where he kept his fishing boat, which I think they just wanted to try and confirm his alibi by going to see if, in fact, he did have a fishing boat where he said he did. And, of course, he did. And over the next 2 days, a search began for Laci. Family members, friends, and people in the community came together to post flyers and search the surrounding areas. At least 900 civilians were part of the search efforts. I mean, they got a ton of people involved. I think they even set up a headquarters at the Red Lion Hotel, I believe it was. And the whole community came out to try and find Laci. 30 police officers, along with many firefighters, led multiple search efforts. They even searched along the dry creek near Laci and Scott's home, and they had water rescue units searching on rafts. They also brought in canine units and police officers on horseback and bicycles. And when it got dark, they used searchlights on helicopters to continue the search. Literally, they did about as much searching as you could possibly do with the resources that they had. I mean, they really, really searched far and wide for Laci. Meanwhile, the police are obviously looking at Scott as the first possible person of interest here for Laci's disappearance. And the first thing that they wanted to do was get a search warrant for Scott's warehouse. And once that warrant was issued, they actually conducted the search warrant on December 27th. And then in a press conference, Detective Brocchini announced that they suspected foul play. The police believed Laci wouldn't take off without any personal items and without telling her husband or family. Family and friends organized a vigil to help raise awareness in the community about Laci's disappearance. And after the first 2 days, the local media picked up the story, and it quickly became a national story and literally made national headlines and probably headlines across the entire world. That's the thing about this case, is that it got so much media coverage to the point where everybody knew about it.
And Laci's family really came to the community to ask for help. I mean, they really were able to rally a bunch of people, I think, with how open they were about their emotions and how upset they were.
Whoever has her, please, please, please let her go. Bring her back.
We love her so much. We want her back. Please, let us have her back.
In fact, over 1,500 members of the community continue to search and raise awareness for Laci. They posted blue and yellow ribbons in her honor and hung flyers, created LaciPeterson.com. A reward was also offered for information that led to Laci's safe return. It started at $25,000, but it was eventually raised to $250,000 and then to $500,000, which is a huge amount for a missing person.
Because I think they thought that somebody must have abducted her.
Yeah.
And maybe was holding her captive, and maybe they could entice that person to return her safely in return for a large sum of money. And I always wonder, I'm like, how often does that work?
I know. I'm curious about that too.
Because
how could you return someone without getting arrested?
How are you ever going to spend that $500,000 unless it's going to be on your
Why would they
legal fees?
Come forward? I guess if there was a way to make sure that they didn't get caught or
drop
something.
the money here, and
like one of those old fashioned. Yeah, you don't hear many stories of that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like $500,000 is like maybe one of the biggest rewards that was ever put out for a missing person. Like I can't think of someone
it's
that had a bigger one.
One of the biggest that I've heard of. Yeah.
Which all helped with the media coverage too. I mean, this became like such a high profile case so quickly.
Huge. Yeah. I mean, the media started treating this as kind of like an OJ Simpson thing.
Yeah.
Just 24-hour coverage on HLN, Nancy Grace talking about it all the time. I mean, it really became like a public frenzy in a way.
Well, and that's because the police were pretty much pointing the finger at Scott, like right off the bat. Like he was...
Well, and the public.
Yeah,
the public was
too.
The first to point the finger at Scott.
Because all the while that the family is asking for the public's help and everything, Scott is nowhere to be found pretty much. Like he's helping, but he's not really like the face of the investigation. He's not really out there pleading to the public.
And meanwhile, her whole family is making extremely emotional appeals. I mean, her dad even broke down crying, sobbing, heavy sobs. And to not really get any of that emotion from Scott was just kind of off-putting for people. And he didn't seem to be concerned.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like he was just not emotional because he was so focused on finding her. He just seemed a little like... I don't know how to even explain, just like not focused at all on her.
Like disconnected.
Very detached from the situation. Like, yeah, it's odd. And of course, people do make the argument that you can't judge someone for how they react to a situation like this. There's no textbook for grief, of course. But I think you have to factor it in a little bit. I don't think there's anything wrong with considering it and making it part of your judgment.
Well, there's a reason why there's literal behavioral analysts that look at people. There's body language experts. I mean, there's a science behind people's behavior and how they respond to different things. So it's not like it's just completely, can be completely dismissed that somebody is acting odd and, you know, therefore it doesn't mean anything. Clearly it means something.
Does it mean they're for sure guilty?
Right.
No.
Does it make them
should it be considered? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely plays into it for sure. It's important to note too that Laci's family did not suspect Scott at this point.
No.
They literally said in public to everybody that they trusted Scott and that we know he had nothing to do with this. And
almost in a way that was like shutting it down, like stop talking, stop saying that. We know it's not him. You're wasting our time. Kind of.
Right.
In the beginning.
Yeah, in the beginning. And that's why the police also kind of kept everything hush hush too about what they were really thinking, because they didn't want to like go against the family, there at the beginning and say like, we think it's Scott, but then the family's like, no. So they really kind of kept it to themselves for a while at who their person of interest was.
So since there was so much media coverage of this case, and I mean record media, trucks just sitting in front of their house at all times and following Scott around.
So while everybody's looking for Laci, the police are starting their investigation. They're starting to try to figure out what happened to her, where was she last seen? And this is really interesting. Basically, a bunch of different people, like we said, at least 12 people reported that they saw Laci walking Mackenzie, their dog, that morning she disappeared. But the police only followed up with 3 and with only 1 phone call. But they never followed up on all the other people that claimed they had seen Laci the day she disappeared.
And they never met up with any of them in person.
Which is very, very weird to me.
That is weird.
And a lot of people take that as they already felt like they knew who did it and they already had their sights locked in on Scott. And that's the reason why they didn't investigate this as seriously as they should have. And they didn't go
look at all possibilities.
Yeah, chase down every lead and make sure that you've got the right person before you just focus in on one person. Because as we'll find out later, there's a lot of different scenarios that could play out.
So obviously the media coverage of this was just insane. They were outside of their house all the time and following Scott and just looking for anything because people were just so interested. I mean, this was on tabloids. I remember as a kid seeing Laci's face on tabloids and thinking that she looked like someone I knew. And it just always stuck out to me, this case, because of that. There was just so much public interest. It was such a soap opera. And it didn't take long before the media reported that Scott had an affair. They found out about his whole affair with Amber Frey, which was currently going on. So they exposed the affair with Amber, but not only that, they also exposed his affairs in college, and that just really doesn't look good. That's ruining all, this image that they were this perfect couple and we're really happy. I mean, definitely makes you question him.
And people don't like cheaters and liars.
No.
And clearly, by this coming out, this proved to the public that Scott was a liar because he was hiding this infidelity with Laci and wasn't forthcoming with information. So I think this was like the straw that broke the camel's back for Scott, really, because once people found out about this, they're like, this guy's a piece of shit.
Really
he's a cheater. He's just pathological liar.
Well, it gives you motive possibly. Maybe he didn't want to have a baby and didn't want to be married. He didn't want that anymore and wanted Amber. So Amber Frey, like we said, had only had a couple of dates with him. So she didn't really know that much about him. And she was shocked when she saw the story on the news in late December, and she decided to call the police because she figured that they didn't know about the affair. She knew that that was big information, but also Scott had told her that he was a widower. If you guys remember earlier, we said that Scott had told her that this was going to be the first Christmas he was alone because his wife had just passed and how she felt really bad for him. So she told them that. And when they heard that, they were like, oh my God, that's crazy. So they asked her if she would continue on in the relationship with him and act like everything's normal and allow them to record their conversation so that they can kind of use her as a tool. So she agreed to do that, which I'm sure was really hard.
Yeah, how nervous he would be knowing that. And she even took calls when like detectives were standing right next to her and she had to act completely normal while talking to Scott and carry on normal conversation with him.
And meanwhile, she's freaked out by him. She thinks he possibly could have killed his wife.
She's realizing like, holy shit, who have I been talking to?
I know, it's a little scary. On January 6th, Scott and Amber were on the phone, and it was then that Scott finally told Amber that he had been lying to her about him traveling that whole time and that he had actually lost his wife before Christmas. He, made all of that up, and here's that phone conversation. So then on New Year's Eve, they had a candlelight vigil for Laci. And there was a lot of media at this, so there's a lot of pictures, and the family spoke there. It was a very emotional night. There were so many people there. And meanwhile, Scott takes a phone call while he's there at the vigil from Amber. And meanwhile, the police are recording this whole thing. And he tells her that he was in Paris.
Yeah, he said he went on like a business trip in Europe or something.
Yeah, I think he said he was going to Paris next. Yeah. Let's actually play the call so we can hear exactly what he said.
Happy New Year. I'm near the Eiffel Tower. New Year's celebration is unreal.
I get reminded every so often.
Who in their right mind would do something like this? You're literally at a candlelight vigil. You're talking to the woman that you're cheating on your wife with. And not only that, you're lying about where you are.
Yeah.
Like that tells you a lot about him.
Then you get off the phone and you go just join back into this vigil.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that he was still trying to keep this affair going just says so much.
Yeah, he would have continued it all the way through this whole thing if he could have.
Then on January 16th, 2003, Scott told Laci's brother Brent on a phone call that he had an affair a year ago and that it was over. Other than this call, Scott barely spoke to Laci's family since the day she disappeared. That is crazy because their family seems so, like, I don't know, friendly and so involved. And yeah, I don't know why he would distance himself so much. You think he would be closer to them? Yeah.
And I think that was a huge red flag for the family, Laci's family, especially, that Scott was acting very, very weird and probably not at all like they thought he would in a situation like this.
And when her family found out about the affair and saw pictures of them together, because they had taken all these pictures at like a Christmas party, him and Amber, they were furious about it. And the final straw for them was learning that Scott had told Amber that his wife was dead just 14 days before Laci went missing. That's so scary.
Big mistake, dude.
Yeah, I mean, wow.
If he did do it, then that was the dumbest thing he could have done, was tell her that.
If he was, I don't know. Does that show he was planning it?
I don't know. Yeah, I think a lot of people would say absolutely.
But even if he wasn't planning it, what a weird thing to tell someone. If you're, like, why wouldn't you just be like, I'm not married? Or I feel like you come up with a bunch of other lies before you straight up are like, yeah, my wife just died 14 days ago or whatever. So then eventually on January 24th, 2003, Laci's family announced at a press conference that they were publicly withdrawing their support for Scott. So basically saying, we think there's a possibility he did do this.
And then on January 31st, Scott sent an email to Laci's mother. And in the email, he wrote, "I never took the time to apologize for my infidelities. I'm truly sorry I was not forthcoming with you." I'm sure that made her family feel a lot better.
An email?
Yeah,
that's like the most unpersonal thing ever.
Yeah, seriously. Especially for something so big. Like,
yeah, I think he'd call her or go talk to her in person.
Well, probably because he knew she'd start questioning him about Laci.
Yeah,
because at this point, he knows that
you have nothing to hide. Then go
suspicious.
Get questions. It's her mom.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
But he's in this protect mode where he's trying to protect himself because he knows that all eyes are on him now and that the police are on him. So he's trying to keep himself, in this protected shell where he can, still do the things that he feels he needs to do, but not, avoid being directly attacked by anybody. The police then got another search warrant for Scott's warehouse in mid-February, but by then he had actually removed everything from the warehouse and terminated the lease at that building. The search for Laci continued through the winter and into spring, and the case was even featured on an episode of America's Most Wanted, as most cases at that time were. And on April 13, 2003, a couple walking their dog in Richmond's Point Isabel Regional Shoreline Park made a very gruesome discovery. In a swampy region of the park near the San Francisco Bay shore, they found the body of a fetus. It was a late-term male fetus, and the body was remarkably well preserved. The umbilical cord was attached, but it looked as if it had been ripped away from the mother. There was also a large gash on the right side of the body, 1.5 loops of nylon tape around the neck, and a piece of black electrical tape over his ear, folding it over. The next day, someone was walking along the eastern shoreline just 1 mile from the site where the fetus was found, and in a rocky area, this person found the mutilated body, basically the torso of a woman.
Sick.
And unlike the fetus, the woman's body had decomposed so much and was so badly mutilated that it was hard to tell what it was. But after DNA testing, it was confirmed that this was the body of 27-year-old Laci Peterson, and the fetus found the day before was her unborn son, Connor.
And even before that actually was confirmed, people pretty much knew. There was coverage right away. As soon as they found the body, there was so much hype about Laci that people immediately connected it to her, and it ended up being her.
And it's important to note, too, that the reason why they even went to the bay to search was because they did find out that Scott had a boat. They did find out he went fishing there. And once Scott really became the prime suspect, that's when the police put all their search efforts into searching the Bay Area. They went out there and combed that area. And it's interesting that they didn't find them. And it happened to be just random people walking along that found Laci. That's kind of weird to me, honestly. But then again, it's also important to note that there's lots of winds in this area. The weather changes a lot. So there's reasons why the police never found anything. But then, after some weather, everything shows up on shore. But when Laci was found, she had no head, no arms, and most of her legs had been removed. 2 ribs were cracked and she had been disemboweled, basically meaning all of her organs were not in her body except for her uterus. Forensic pathologist Dr. Brian Peterson, who is not related to Scott, performed both autopsies, and he found that Connor had been left inside Laci's uterus after she died and wasn't removed until after her body had started to decompose. This explains how Connor's body was preserved while Laci's was severely decayed.
Sometimes they call this, I believe, coffin birth, might be the term for it. But yes, a baby can be born after the mother has passed away. It just naturally can come out of the body. It's so sick to think about. This makes me so disturbed.
But the big thing here is the electrical tape on Connor.
Yeah, that's what's so confusing. Well, some people say that maybe as he was born, per se, that the tape came off of her body and onto him. I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I just hate thinking about it. It freaks me out.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense at all, especially considering that they were likely dumped in the bay into the water. And so how does tape move from one body to another? That doesn't really make sense at all, or is even possible, I feel like.
It's very confusing.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. How is tape that's in water going to stick to another human long enough for another human to find them?
To pick it up.
It's very weird. I mean, the tape thing is still a mystery. We don't understand that at all. And to me, I think there's a possibility that perhaps, where did the tape come from then?
I don't know. I obviously don't know. No one knows.
So unless after this had all happened, somebody found the baby and then put the tape on it after it had come ashore.
I've heard a lot of people saying they think it was tape on her body that ended up on him after he was born.
That just doesn't make sense.
I know. It's very confusing. That's just what, the experts say.
There's no way electrical tape is going to do that.
Yeah, I'm curious what you guys think about that, because there's definitely some inconsistencies. I'm confused.
So Dr. Peterson could not determine a cause of death or time of death for Laci. He also didn't list an official cause of death for Connor, though he said that Laci's death likely caused Connor's, which that does make sense. Yeah. But with the discovery of the bodies, the missing person case then became a murder investigation. But once the bodies were found, the detectives were like, we got our guy. This was clearly premeditated. He clearly planned to murder Laci.
He had been out there that day. I mean, yeah, it definitely looks that way.
So within a week after they found Laci's body, the detectives wanted to talk to Scott right away. So they began to try and track him down, and they suspected that he was down in San Diego near the Mexican border, and he was driving a Mercedes. So on April 18, 2003, they actually tracked his car to a freeway in San Diego, and he was going 80 miles per hour. And then suddenly he slammed on the brakes and pulled over. And this erratic pattern continued. They even used a helicopter to try to stay on top of him, but the police still lost him. And according to Scott, he says the reason for all of this and the reason for going down to San Diego was that he wanted to get out of town, go play golf with his family, his father and his brother, and that's why he was going down there. But police thought he was literally trying to escape and go on the run pretty much. And the reason for his erratic driving, according to Scott, is because he thought the media was following him, and he's just so sick of the media at this point that he was like, I'm going to do anything I can to lose them. And so that's why his driving was so erratic.
And there are actually recordings of his phone calls, I think with his brother, saying the paparazzi are following me. I'm going to try to lose them. But eventually he calls him and he's like, hey, I'm not going to be able to golf. If the paparazzi see me golfing, that's going to look really bad for my image, basically. And I can't come. But it wasn't the paparazzi, it was the police following him. But he tried to speed away from them. He said he even flipped them off a few times. So it was like a big chase.
Yeah. And what was interesting is that when they found Scott had dyed his dark hair blonde and had grown a goatee. And in the car, they said they found his driver's license and his brother's driver's license And the car was packed with clothes, camping equipment, fishing gear, ropes, knives, hiking boots, and a shovel. He also had $15,000 in cash, 12 Viagra pills, and 4 cell phones. So to the police, this looks like he's about to go on the run. But he claims that this was just, he was like kind of living out of his car because he was trying to get away from everybody, get away from the media.
Yeah, his life was kind of a fucking mess.
It was an absolute mess. So he wanted to try and hide just from, all the press. But just 5 days after Connor was found, the police arrested Scott Peterson on suspicion of murder. Scott's brother Lee said that the only reason he had his driver's license was to get a discount at the golf course as a San Diego resident. And he explained that Scott was actually living out of his Mercedes in order to avoid the media. So his family did vouch for him on the fact that he wasn't trying to flee or go to Mexico. He just was literally trying to get away from the media. But investigators were not buying the story at all. And Scott was arraigned on April 21st, 2003, and pled guilty to 2 felony counts of murder with premeditation and special circumstances. And 1 year later, actually in April 2004, President George Bush signed the Unborn Victims of Violence Act into law with Laci's mother and stepfather at the White House, which basically states that under federal law, if someone harms or kills a fetus while committing a crime against the mother, that person will be charged with a separate offense for the crime against the unborn child. So hence the 2 murder charges. On Laci's 28th birthday, May 4th, 2003, more than 3,000 people gathered for a memorial service to honor the life of Laci and her unborn son, Connor. So meanwhile, Scott's in jail awaiting trial, and the whole trial is just a complete debacle because there's so much press, so much media. Everybody knows about this case. So Scott's defense lawyers were very worried that they weren't going to get a fair trial in where they lived in Modesto because everybody knew about it and, it wouldn't be fair. So they went to the judge and said, hey, we need to move his trial to another county because we need to find somewhere where he's going to have, a fair trial. And they ended up moving his trial to San Mateo County, but that's only I think less than an hour away. So they're like, well, that doesn't really help us that much because everybody there is going to know about it too. But then again, it's like, where could he have even gone to for he could have been tried in New York? And I think people would have known about this case there because it was just so
true,
so widespread that it didn't matter. I don't think it really mattered where the trial was. It was going to be very difficult to try to find jurors that didn't know about this case.
No matter what.
And what's interesting is that despite all the media coverage leading up to this, they did not allow cameras in the courtroom. And a gag order was placed on those involved in the trial in order to keep the details out of the media. But you know how the media is. They got leaks. They got people that
they're
on the inside, they're going to get the juicy details. So Scott hired a high profile criminal defense attorney named Mark Garagos. And Mark, he was on TV a lot. I think he was on Larry King or some of those, those panels that talk on the news, things like that. He was definitely very well known.
Yeah,
he had worked a ton of high profile cases and been very successful. And I believe he told the Scott's family that it was going to be $1 million to defend Scott.
$1 million. And
they
were like, okay, what else are we going to do?
Yeah. And they were going to have to sell everything to fund that because they didn't really have the money to do that. But that was literally their only shot at getting Scott the defense that he needed. So he had Mark Garagos, who's a very animated individual, and he is very good at what he does. And on the other side, the lead prosecutor was named Rick DeStasso. And in the opening statements, basically they put forward this theory that what happened is Scott actually killed Laci, and I don't think they even said exactly how he killed Laci, but then he put her body in his truck, and then the next morning, first thing in the morning, he went and dumped her body in the bay and put her body in the boat, and then he took his boat out to where he said he was fishing and then dumped her body there, which we'll kind of analyze that a bit more here in a bit. But that was their story. Now, if you go back, you remember Scott saying that he had actually watched Martha Stewart with Laci that morning. So in the defense's opening statements, they literally debunked the prosecution's theory right off the bat because they're like, how could have Scott been out dumping his wife's body if he was watching Martha Stewart with her that morning? And Scott had been pretty specific about the episode that he had watched, and he mentioned that Martha Stewart was making some type of meringue in the episode. And the defense was smart. They actually went and found the clip that aired that morning.
Made sure that was what was actually airing.
Played it. And sure enough, Martha Stewart was making meringue. And so that right there put a big question mark in the prosecution's theory, because clearly he was watching this then at that time, and Laci was likely still alive at that point.
Yeah, why would he have just been watching it by himself too?
Right.
So that really wasn't a good point. So the main motive for the prosecutors, as far as what they thought Scott had done this for, was that he didn't want to be tied down with a wife and kid. And I guess the fact that he had an affair definitely shows that he wanted some other type of life and wasn't really happy maybe. One of the defense witnesses was a computer forensic analyst who talked about the internet use at Scott's home and at the warehouse. He said that around 8:40 on December 24th, when Laci disappeared, someone was on the Peterson home computer looking at sunflower umbrella stands and women's clothing. Now, what's interesting is Laci loved sunflowers. She always had. She's into horticulture, and she just thought they were really pretty. So it's likely her. And if she is on the computer at 8:40 that morning, then their entire statement about him having done it the night before and keeping her body cannot be true.
Right.
So it basically threw out a lot of what they had the first day. It didn't make any sense.
Which is very weird that they didn't even know that this was going to be said. Like, why would they present a theory that's just impossible based upon the internet usage and what the computer analyst said? Yeah. That's very weird. Like, they didn't make sure that their witness that they're going to bring in, or their expert they brought in, was going to, it basically ended up being a plus for the defense, because they didn't even realize, they're like, oh, he basically just debunked the prosecutor's theory again.
Yeah. And based on this new timeline, if Laci was the one that was on the computer, Scott would have had to immediately kill her after she got off the computer, and then clean up the evidence, then drag her body all the way to the bay and dump her off in broad daylight.
Yeah. And let's not forget stopping at the warehouse to hop on his computer first.
Right. He also did that.
Because we know that he went there and sent a couple emails, like basically did a couple normal things that somebody does in the morning at work before going fishing that day.
So some people obviously have argued that Scott was actually the one looking up the umbrella stand to make it seem like Laci was still alive. However, if this was true, why wouldn't Scott be bringing this up, saying, look, I know Laci was still alive that morning because she was on the computer looking up umbrella stands. Like, why wouldn't he have made it obvious? But he didn't. He never told police that. He didn't know that she had made those computer searches. He found out when the computer analyst brought it up.
Yeah.
So you'd think that all that time he would have been trying to debunk everything they were saying to him if he knew that detail. Like, hey, I can prove that she was alive.
Let's go look at her computer and see what she was doing.
It doesn't even make sense for him to make that up as a lie.
But then again, on the flip side, you could say that I think from the very beginning, because everything shifted to him so quickly in this case, that he basically shut down as a person, just in general. Like I think maybe he knew that I'm going to be the suspect here, so I'm just going to protect myself and not say anything to anybody. Somebody could argue that, is all I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Is it likely that most people do that? No. But maybe that's what Scott was thinking.
But either way, if Laci was the one on the computer at that time, it proves the entire prosecution's timeline to be wrong. They would have had to completely change it from thinking that she was dead on the 23rd to thinking that she was still alive on the 24th. So,
which is huge. That's a huge thing to prove.
Mm-hmm. So one thing they did find when searching through his stuff was a bucket of dried cement at his warehouse. And Scott said that he made this as an anchor for his boat. At one point during the trial, they displayed pictures of Laci's body as well as Connor's. And during this time, there were a lot of reports about Scott saying that he wasn't showing any emotional reaction when he saw these pictures. However, I've heard many people say that he actually did. He just didn't show the classic, like he wasn't crying and really showing anything extremely emotional, but he was having these like gulps of air and was like kind of sitting there with his mouth open, blown away clearly.
Well, because in some cases people would say, oh, they're fake crying. So if you do show real emotion, maybe you do start breaking down and crying, which I think a lot of people would be able to discern whether or not they thought it was fake crying or not. But at the same time, it's just another thing for people to kind of use against you. If you did start like tearing up and crying, I feel like a lot of people would have been like, oh, he's fake crying, trying to act like he's sad, now. But on the flip side, maybe he's just like, I'm going to be, and his family has said that Scott and his whole family are stoic people. That's just kind of how they are. They're very like, I guess, unemotional, and they just kind of like keep it inside versus expressing their emotions outwardly. Mm-hmm. So,
and that became a big part of this case was his emotional state, even to the jury. Like the jury was even presented everything about those calls with Amber.
Yeah.
And presented that how can this guy make these calls from a vigil when his wife's missing, and meanwhile he's lying to his side girl. Mm-hmm. And that really did not do well with the jury.
Right. Now let's go back for a second, talk about the cement anchors for a second. Mm-hmm. So this was a big thing for the prosecution because they found the materials, the cement remains that were used to make the cement anchor. They asked Scott, how many anchors did you make? He said 1, and that was for his boat. There was some contention about the extra cement and where it went, and they found it actually at the Peterson home. So there was, some debate whether or not, well, he clearly made more than 1 anchor because where's the cement and stuff? And he was like, I poured it out. I used it there. And they did find it.
They did.
So as far as what we know, he may have only made 1 anchor. But according to, the people that found the body and experts, they said it looked like somebody had attached these cement anchors to all of her limbs, Laci's limbs, and one around her neck. And that's the reason why basically there was nothing left but a torso.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of debate whether or not,
like, why was he making the anchors? And
again, we have to remember though that, when we think of anchors, I think a lot of us think of like a big traditional anchor. But Scott's boat is a tiny fishing boat. I mean, this thing is small.
It is small.
It's maybe like 8 feet long or close to that.
Yeah. And let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Is it even possible for him to have thrown a body off of this small boat without tipping it?
With anchors.
Yeah.
That to me is the most puzzling thing about this is how it's not even physically possible.
Yeah.
And the defense, this was a huge point for them. Like, we will prove to you that this is impossible for somebody to bring a body onto this boat. Get out of the actual harbor or marina itself because there's people living in houseboats. This boat is tiny. There's no coverage on it. There's no way to hide anything on this boat, really. I mean, I guess you could throw a tarp over it, but somebody would have seen
something sketchy,
right?
Yeah.
And no, everybody reported like it was just Scott in the boat. There's nothing else in there with him that saw him go out that day. And I'm pretty sure if he had had a body in there with a bunch of cement anchors, somebody would have saw something.
Well, his attorney actually set it all up too, and tried to have, I think, 4 different people try to throw off
the jury,
a weight, like a dummy with anchors on it. And all 4 times the boat tipped over. It wasn't even possible for them to do it.
The defense themselves made a video
It
got thrown out. But the fact that the judge did not let this video be played in the trial was huge because the guy that's performing this experiment is flipping the boat every time, anytime he tries to throw something heavy overboard. That's how tipsy this boat is.
Yeah.
So Scott, if he did do this in the way that they said he did it, he would have capsized the boat. He would have flipped the boat 100%. There's no way for this to even happen the way they said it did. But what they did allow in court was they allowed the boat to be on dry land, and they allowed the jurors to go in the boat and see how tippy it was, but it's on land.
Yeah.
You can't, how's that even?
Yeah. How are they even supposed to compare it? It's completely different.
So I think in that regard, they kind of got screwed by not being able to actually put the boat in water and show people, how did this happen? Because this is a huge point, is that's their main theory, is that he took her out on the boat and threw her over, and that's how she ended up on the shore.
And it's like, you need evidence. You need evidence. If you can't even explain how someone did the murder, then that's a big problem. And you probably can't give them the death penalty. And I understand, this case is so emotional. People are so split on this one. And some people are set 100%. They cannot be convinced. Scott Peterson did this. And I understand that his emotions are so hard to wrap your head around, how he could possibly have been acting the way he was. And obviously it's just disgusting, all the affairs that he was having. And I feel bad for Laci in that way, but is there enough evidence to put this, to make sure, we are sure that this person killed her?
Without a reasonable doubt.
Right. And there's reasonable doubts. We'll bring up some of those points in a bit.
Scott's a scumbag for sure. I mean, I think he may be like addicted to sex even. He might have a sex issue. I mean, they pointed a lot of things to, Amber, the fact he had pornography channels purchased, different things with sex workers he was involved with. There was a lot of different things. And clearly he was promiscuous, I guess is the word, right? Like he seeked out sex wherever he could get it. That was definitely the number one thing on his mind. But then again, there's tons of people out there like that. And that doesn't make you a murderer. Doesn't make you somebody that would kill your wife and your unborn child for what? I mean, so that you can be free to have all the sex you want. Like, to me, Scott's mental state I just don't see a rational way where he would go down that road. Like, he was looking forward to his son.
I mean, maybe though, like, people can portray that they are a lot of things.
Well, according to his family and those closest to him, they said that Scott was ecstatic for having a child.
But maybe to them, I mean, maybe we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
I'm just saying, like, as much as we don't have an idea that he did it for sure, we don't know that he didn't do it either. Mm-hmm. And I'm just somewhere in the middle. Like, so much of his actions and the way he was just really strike me the wrong way. But then at the same time, there's just like not enough.
Right. So let's talk about why there's not enough.
Okay.
So in all of these searches that the police did, they did multiple searches of his house. They combed his house. Mm-hmm. They never found one thing that would connect him to Laci's murder or disappearance at all. There's no forensic evidence. There was no physical evidence there. The only thing they found was some pliers that had her hair on it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, of course there's going to be her hair, but there's no blood. There's no, there was a lot of things leaking to the media that said that there was bleach. There was a smell of bleach in the house.
Oh yeah. That was a big thing actually. That did get falsely reported, that there was bleach in the house and that he had used bleach for something, but that's not true.
There was a lot of false things that came out through the media. The media really tainted this investigation and this case and trial, honestly, in my opinion.
And that's why it's been reversed now. I mean, which we'll get into that update, but because they have brought up so many of these points, I mean, there's a huge documentary on Hulu that's really, shows Scott's side. It's not as biased, and it's pretty mind-blowing how little evidence they had.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, even to the point where during the trial, the prosecution brought in a hydrologist named Rick Chang, and he testified about where the bodies had been dumped and how they traveled through the water. But during cross-examination by the defense, he admitted that it wasn't possible to know precise locations because of the chaotic tidal systems in the San Francisco Bay. And it was also came out that he has no knowledge about tidal systems. He has no idea. Like, the prosecution really, really messed up. Like, they brought in some horrible experts that did not help them at all and in fact hurt them. And so throughout the whole trial, I mean, the defense was feeling pretty good. Like, they were feeling good about the fact that, the prosecution was messing up. They were literally debunking everything they threw at them. And so they felt pretty confident about what the result of the trial would be. There hasn't been a whole lot to smile about these last few months, but things are getting better. At least it's warm outside in most places, and yeah, you're able to start to see your friends and family, but that's not the only things you can't help but smile about, right? Do you have a megawatt smile to show off? No? My friends over at Candid can help you. Candid clear aligners are comfortable, removable, and totally invisible, unlike wire braces, so you can transform your smile without anyone noticing. Plus, your treatment is prescribed and monitored remotely by a licensed orthodontist who's an expert in tooth movement. With Candid, your treatment includes remote monitoring by the same orthodontist who created your plan. The average Candid treatment is just 6 months, and you'll start seeing results way before then and costs an average of 50% less than Invisalign. So if you're ready to take the first step toward getting your dream smile you can't wait to show off, get started today from the comfort of your own home with Candid's risk-free starter kit and $75 off. Go to candidco.com/milehigher and use code milehigher. That's candidco.com/milehigher. Code milehigher for your risk-free starter kit and $75 off. candidco.com/milehigher and use code milehigher. But everything did not go according to plan, even for the defense, because the defense brought forward their star expert witness who was a fertility specialist named Charles Murch, who would supposedly prove that Connor had died a week later than what the prosecution claimed. But during his testimony, he admitted his findings were based on anecdotal evidence from a friend of Laci's. And when he was pressed, Charles got agitated and told the prosecutor to cut him some slack. Which, you remember that? Like, that was like, who does that? Like,
very odd.
Yeah, it's a very weird way. Like, he just totally flopped on the stand. Yeah. And yeah, this was a deciding factor for some of the jury members. Also, the prosecution made the case that Scott's motive for the murder was threefold. First, he wanted to continue his affair with Amber Fry. Second, he was in a lot of debt and wanted to collect Laci's life insurance policy for $250,000. And third, he didn't want to be a father. In a recorded phone call with Amber, she asked him if he was still adamant about not having kids with her. He said, "Oh, I wouldn't say adamant, but it's not in my thoughts currently."
So over 5 months after the trial started, on November 3rd, 2004, the jury started to deliberate. And only a few days into the deliberation, one of the jurors confessed that they had broken a rule where you're not allowed to do any outside research on your own. I mean, that's pretty obvious. You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And they had done some research on the internet, and a lot of stuff was on the internet about this case, obviously. So it left the judge with no choice but to kick her off and to bring in a backup juror.
So the alternate juror that they brought in to replace this other juror was Rochelle Neese. And the media quickly nicknamed her Rochelle Strawberry Shortcake because of her bright red hair. And it was speculated that Rochelle wanted to serve on a death penalty case, and she lost her job to serve and she lied on her juror questionnaire. But yet she was still allowed to be on the jury. The foreman, Gregory Jackson, requested to be replaced after the jury had already started deliberations. And Gregory Jackson, by all accounts, was probably the most intelligent person in the deliberation room. And he was leaning towards finding Scott Peterson not guilty by, all the evidence. Because once you go back into the deliberation room, you start going over all the evidence that was presented in court. You have to go through step by step and see if there's enough evidence to convict this person of the crimes they've been accused of. And according to Gregory Jackson, they were definitely leaning to not guilty for Scott. However, Mark Garrigo, Scott's attorney, told reporters that the foreman had received threats and no longer felt safe serving. And it's speculated that the real reason was that the other jurors wanted the foreman to be replaced. So it's almost like, because like a jury foreman kind of has to lead everybody through, and he's kind of the person kind of has a final say in a sense, a
little bit.
Because ultimately, I think if Gregory Jackson had not been removed from the jury, then this would have ended up being a hung jury at the end of it.
Quite possibly, yeah.
And that's what Mark Garrigo said as well, is he was like, the best case scenario here is that this is a hung jury, and we do it again and we get a different jury. So once Gregory Jackson was replaced and a new foreman was appointed, one of the current jurors, what's crazy is that the verdict literally came back, I think, within the next 24 hours. Yeah. And nobody expected it to come back that Friday. They thought it was going to go into the next week. So Scott's lawyer, Mark Garrigos, wasn't even there for when the verdict was read. How crazy is that?
I know, yeah. He just assumed it. He's very cocky.
He was like, they assumed that, okay, a new foreman, it's going to be a whole nother thing. It's going to be at least, till next week that we get the verdict. But nope, it came that Friday.
So the verdict was announced on November 12th, 2004 at 1:30 p.m. And Scott was found responsible for both Laci and Connor's death. Here's the video.
State of California versus Scott Peterson. We, the jury in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Scott Lee Peterson, guilty of the crime of murder of Laci Denise Peterson in violation of the Penal Code Section 187A, as alleged in count 1 of the information filed herein. We, the jury, further find the degree of the murder to be that of the first degree. Debated November 12, 2004, foreperson number 6. We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Scott Lee Peterson, guilty of the crime of murder of baby Connor Peterson.
After the verdict, there was a period for about a month where they had to decide if he was going to receive the death penalty or if he was just going to get life without parole. And obviously this is a huge decision. Not that it means much in California these days. Like, they don't end up actually carrying out through with the life.
Yeah, it's probably been a long time that they've carried out a death sentence there.
Yeah. So anyway, on December 13th, 2004, it was announced that the jury decided on the death penalty. And here is that clip.
People of the state of California versus Scott Peterson. We, the jury in the above entitled cause, fix the penalty at death.
Stagger my head. I had no idea what was coming. I could feel my feet on the floor. I could feel the chair I was sitting in. My vision was even a little blurry. And I just had this weird sensation that I was falling forward and down, and there was going to be no end to this falling forward and down, like there was no floor to land on.
So later on March 16th, 2005, Judge DeLucci sentenced Scott to death by lethal injection and ordered him to pay $10,000 for Laci's funeral. He was then sent to San Quentin State Prison the next day, which is the only death row prison in California, because that's how little death row inmates they have compared to the rest of the country. And San Quentin, man, that's a rough place to go.
Definitely.
Scott did try to collect Laci's life insurance policy for $250,000, but in California, it's against the law for a criminal to profit from an insurance policy.
Good.
That's interesting, because I'm sure he was going to use that to try to pay his lawyer bills.
What the fuck?
Mm-hmm. But a judge ruled in October 2005 that as a convicted murderer of Laci, Scott was not entitled to collect any money. It was Sharon, Laci's mom, that ended up getting the $250,000.
Good. So obviously, I'm sure you guys are pretty on the fence about what you think, whether you believe he's guilty or you think he's innocent, or like I said, you're somewhere in the middle. So maybe this will help you kind of figure out what you think, though, because this definitely presents some interesting things to think about.
Absolutely.
So if Scott didn't commit the crime, who could have done it? Well, there was a woman in their area in Modesto who had a really sketchy encounter with two men on the day of Christmas Eve. Her name is Lourdes, and she had a clothing store, and she was also 8 months pregnant during the time that Laci disappeared. She says that during Christmas Eve, she was at her store when around 11:15 a.m., a suspicious car pulled up across the street from her store. She said that for about 30 minutes, two men sat in the old car and watched her from across the street. Then she said that one of the guys got out of their car and went into the store. Lourdes ran into the back and hid and called the police. And to this day, she believes that those two men may be responsible for Laci's death.
Because she thought they were going to hurt her too. They were going to possibly do something because she was pregnant. Mm-hmm. Which to that point, I want to say that if you're not familiar with Modesto, it's a agricultural community, but there is some rough parts of town there. There's a lot of crime there. Some people that live there even call it's like meth murder and something else. Like, there's some absolutely rough areas there. There's absolutely a decent amount of crime. And even in the areas around where Scott and Laci's house was and in their neighborhood. And when Laci would go for walks, she would go through or nearby some of these areas where there was potential crime being committed. So with that being said, this theory is very interesting. So a neighbor who lived across the street, directly across the street from Scott and Laci, Susan Medina, was out of town between December 24th and 26th in 2002. And during this time, her house was broken into. The burglars stole jewelry, handguns, and a toolbox, but they left behind hundreds of dollars in cash and a Mercedes, apparently. A neighbor named Diane Jackson saw three men in a brown or tan van outside Susan's house. And she actually reported it to police because she thought it was kind of weird that it was there. Mm-hmm. And two other neighbors, Edgar Maldonado and his wife, saw a similar van at a nearby gas station. So it's possible that maybe Laci had seen the burglary taking place and had been walking outside the house, and perhaps the burglars took her with her because she witnessed what they were doing and, threatened her.
Some people that know Laci has said that she would be the type to call out someone who's doing something wrong, that she really didn't like anything or anyone being treated unfairly, and she could have, as other people put it, stuck her nose in it,
right,
and told them like, hey, what are you doing, or I'm going to call the police, and they acted on her because of that.
Right. And there is multiple witnesses that said they saw her confront two men. And the police never followed up on any of these witnesses, unfortunately. No. So we'd have really no way to know.
How insane is that?
Yeah. That's what's crazy. And the police did confirm that a burglary was reported. Mm-hmm. But what's crazy is when they came out and said it, they straight up lied about when it took place.
Yeah, they did.
They said it was the 26th that it took place.
And here's why that just makes no sense. There are so many media trucks covering the Peterson investigation, and they're all in front of the Peterson house. And this is across the street. There are news media everywhere, journalists everywhere. Someone would have seen this. No one would commit a burglary when there's people all over the place outside. There's just no way it happened on the 26th.
No, because they would have saw it. Like they would have had him on camera if that was the case. The media would have.
No way.
So, but the police are adamant that that's when it happened.
Because it ruins their whole narrative.
So that right there shows you that there was motive for the police to pin this on Scott. And it was the investigation was absolutely unfair. In fact, it was probably botched completely because they were so laser focused on Scott being the one that killed Laci.
And I mean, he may have, but why wouldn't you investigate all possibilities and make sure that that's what happened and that you don't have the wrong guy and the real killers are still out there?
Right.
You know?
It's just sloppy police work. It's lazy.
And you have to be absolutely sure. You can't just go off of he seems guilty, so he did it, and that's the end of that. I mean, no, that's not how this works.
Right. This theory is very, very interesting to me because I think there could be some validity here with this one. So during the investigation, the police actually got an anonymous tip about a satanic cult being run out of a nearby building that had abducted Laci and sacrificed her and her baby. The police actually called the owner of the building, a furniture store owner, and he told them he had never heard of a satanic cult anywhere close. Another pregnant woman, though, named Evelyn Hernandez disappeared from San Francisco on May 1st, 2002, and Evelyn and Laci both disappeared on satanic holy days. Both women were missing their hands, feet, and head when they were found. It's very, very weird.
It is. I mean, what are the chances of that happening twice so close to each other? It feels like they had to be connected. So that, I mean, that's huge.
That's a huge...
Finding her was huge.
Yeah, that's a huge clue, too, to maybe we should investigate this. And in another possible linked case, members of a satanic cult called the Order of the Lion killed 4 people in 1990. And the cult had 20 to 30 members, and 3 of them are now on death row for the murders. And during the investigation, it was discovered that members of the Order of the Lion believed sacrificing a newborn was the purest thing you could do. And the gash on Connor's body could be an indication of ritual sacrifice, which
so creepy.
I think there's absolutely a chance. And when you look at these on a map, they are not that far away from each other from where all of these people were murdered. So it's very possible that there was, whether it was a satanic cult or just some random group that does shit like this. Yeah. It's very possible. It really is. It's not like they were living in, Hollywood Hills or something. I mean, this is not, there is a lot of crime in this area that they lived. I think it's absolutely possible she could have been murdered by these burglars. And in fact, they said they solved that case and they arrested 2 individuals for that. And they said they had nothing to do with the missing pregnant woman.
Well, of course they're going to say they have nothing to do with it.
But then again, they heard kind of the opposite about it in prison from other inmates. And this was even brought to the police, but that was never followed up on.
Yeah, imagine that. Because they were set from the beginning.
Yeah, they were absolutely set on Scott from the beginning, which support the theory that Scott may have killed her in their home on December 23rd, 2002 and dumped her body the next day. And maybe Scott did set it all up and it was Scott that did the internet searches to make it appear that she was still alive. Because on December 24th, Scott washed his clothes as soon as he returned from his fishing trip, which was a chore usually done by Laci. He also mopped the floor and vacuumed, even though the housekeeper had just done those chores the day before, and multiple chemicals were found on the mop. An inspection of his fishing gear also showed that it hadn't been used that day.
Well, that's pretty big too.
And investigators found evidence that Scott had a 55-gallon drum, cement blocks, fishing hooks, and fishing weights, but none of these items could be found. And Scott couldn't tell the investigators what happened to them.
Well, that's all very peculiar and definitely doesn't help his case either. And that's the thing is part of me still feels like he did it. It's just, there's not enough to be absolutely certain.
Right. I think at the end of the day, this is because it was such a high profile case. And this was a great point that was brought up, is that the Modesto Police Department was under the limelight. And this is a police department that was not prepared for the media storm that followed this. And
so true.
They essentially were pressured by the media from day one to solve this and to hold somebody responsible for this.
Yeah.
And rather than look incompetent and, you know, basically come out as like, oh, we fucked up. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know how to investigate this. We suck. They literally followed what the media told them to do, essentially. I mean, the amount of leaks and
give
information.
Give the people what they want.
Right. Give the people what they want.
Feed the beast.
And it all pointed to Scott. And that bled into his trial. And that just, you know, everything was weighted against him. I do not believe that Scott got a fair trial.
No,
at
I
all.
don't think so.
I think he needs another trial.
They clearly need to look at all of it again.
Yeah. Because I don't think there's no physical and forensic evidence. So let's talk about like how is it even possible that he's able to pull all this off without leaving any traces of evidence at all?
Yeah, that'd be extremely hard to do.
And when you go over the timeline, I mean, the amount of people that saw Laci walking her dog during the time that Scott was at his warehouse and then out, you know, heading towards the bay. How do you explain that?
It doesn't make any sense. It absolutely
He's over here. She's over here.
She's still alive.
And she's still alive walking. So unless there was somebody out there that day that looked exactly like Mackenzie, their dog, because everybody remembered the golden retriever. That's why they're so sure. Is like, we know, everybody knows Mackenzie, and it was a pregnant woman, and all these people.
Yeah. And there was enough people that it's not like every single one of them was confused.
Yeah. Diana Campos, 10:45 a.m., saw Laci and Mackenzie in Dry Creek Regional Park. Mackenzie was off leash and barking, and two men were yelling at Laci, "Shut the fucking dog up." That's what this person heard.
That's huge. Why was that not investigated fully?
Right.
That lead. That's just crazy to me.
And Scott's at 11, loading the boat onto his truck, driving to the marina where he went fishing. So the timelines are just don't match up. And unless you discount all of these witnesses, which is pretty much what the police did, is they said, you didn't see her.
Whatever.
Like that doesn't matter, whatever you guys are claiming.
Picking and choosing what they want to hear.
Because at this point, they don't want to be wrong. Like they fucked this up big time. If Scott's not the one who did it, then they really, really mess this one up. The killer is out there, or maybe it's, you know, the burglar in jail.
The wrong guy.
Yeah, the wrong guy.
Maybe he's just a shitty husband. He's sleazy. He's whatever else. But is he a murderer? Did he kill her? We don't know, you know, and there's not enough to say.
That's where I'm at with this is I'm like, I don't think he should have been convicted for this. I think that if anything, it should, I mean, just based upon what happened with the jury, it should have been a hung jury and he should have gotten a new trial and maybe it would have been more fair that time. But I think there's absolutely not enough evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to convict him of the murders. There's just not.
And sentence him to death.
Yeah, to death. Yeah, there's just not.
So Scott and his attorney eventually filed an appeal in 2012, and it was 423 pages. The first part of the appeal was about the process of selecting the jury. The judge had made the decision that if a juror said that they were opposed to the death penalty, that they would automatically release them. The appeal argued that this wasn't okay because of the fact that the judge simply asked them a personal question instead of asking if they would be able to put their personal opinions aside about the death penalty and be able to strictly follow the laws, regardless of their personal beliefs about the death penalty. The second part of the appeal was the argument that the prosecution used tactics that aren't guaranteed to be foolproof, such as using dogs that don't have certification. They also did some mock attempts with the dog that they used, and the dog failed 75% of the time. So they argue that this wasn't scientific evidence, probably isn't. And also the whole thing about the hydrologist. They said that, you know, this guy really didn't have any experience with the movement of water and decay of bodies in water. So he shouldn't have been able to go up there at all. The third part of the appeal was going over the pieces of evidence from the defense side that was never included or taken into account. They didn't include the experiment done on the boat, you know, to show that it could not have physically been possible to throw the body off with the weights. But at the same time, the judge also allowed the jury to go inside of Scott's boat and kind of rock it around back and forth on the land.
Which isn't fair at all. I mean, it's like, that's just pointless. It's
not an accurate representation of what would have actually happened.
Yeah. My whole thing is like, they did not prove their theory. They did not prove anything. The whole boat thing is a mystery.
No, yeah. I don't know what the point is.
Because for all we know, Laci could have been murdered and then dumped just off the shore.
Yeah, it may not have been the boat at all.
Because also think about it, how her body really made it all the way from over where Scott was, all the way to the shore.
No DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in that like short amount of time, and I don't know, it just doesn't. And the place that Scott said he went to too is a shallow area. Why would he dump a body in a shallow area? And also, yeah, it's just like, it doesn't make any sense. The whole boat dropping thing doesn't make any sense, especially with Scott's boat.
But on August 10th, 2017, the state attorney general responded to the appeal, filing a 150-page document contesting the notion and disputing the claims that were put forward in the appeal, stating that the appeal ignored overwhelming evidence that Scott Peterson had murdered Laci. So Scott's case remained on appeal for the California Supreme Court for a while. And even though he had the death sentence, of course, it's important to note how rare it is that someone actually gets put to death in California. No one has actually been put to death since 2006.
So most recently, in early June 2020, Scott's current attorney, Cliff Gardner, argued for a new trial in front of the California Supreme Court, claiming that the trial judge had made serious errors that influenced the jury, which we just talked about. Cliff also argued that the trial should have been moved even farther away from the media frenzy that surrounded it, and much of the evidence presented by the prosecution shouldn't have been allowed, particularly evidence from a tracking dog named Trimble. Trimble supposedly picked up Laci's scent and tracked it to a boat ramp in Berkeley. However, even according to the prosecution, Laci never walked on the ramp. And that's not science. You can't base, there's no science
around it. And like we
a
said, the dog had like a 75% accuracy rating, so that's not going to fly.
Junk science is what they would call it.
Yeah.
The court was asked to redo the penalty and guilt phases of the trial. And on August 24th, 2020, the Supreme Court of California unanimously ruled to overturn 47-year-old Scott Peterson's death sentence. However, his conviction for first and second degree murder was upheld. Obviously, the news of Scott's overturned death sentence was painful and shocking to Laci's family, and the penalty phase of the trial will be redone. And the family will have to relive the trauma of Laci's disappearance and murder. And they may even have to testify again. I wonder how that's going to go. Like, what sentence are they going to reduce his sentence any?
I don't know.
Or are they just going to give him life?
God, I feel so bad for her family because they truly do believe it was him. And I wonder if they have had any doubts. I mean, I don't think they've publicly put anything out there, but I wonder if they, like, what they think personally. But her mom does not want him to be freed. I mean, she thinks he did it.
Yeah.
So I understand her pain, and like, this is all wrapped up for them. And obviously it's easier to just be like, he did it. And you know, fuck him and he's done.
Well, it's like too late in the game.
How do we know for sure? Yeah. And doesn't that bother you? It bothers me so much thinking he might not have done it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to see anyone get the death penalty or even life in prison for something they didn't do. I mean, obviously no one wants that. And how do you make absolutely sure?
Well, I mean, the court system needs to do its job and do it properly. Like,
shouldn't they redo the whole trial then?
Yeah, that's what I think I think they should redo the whole trial and relook at everything.
Be so painful for
and it could end up with
family.
Him being acquitted. Like, he could walk away from it.
And that might be really hard on them. But I mean, if don't they want the truth at the end of the day? They want the real person who murdered Laci behind bars, right?
Yeah.
Like, if the real guys are out there still, or maybe they're in jail for something else, I mean,
wouldn't you want to know the truth?
Yeah. Right? She would want the right person. And imagine if he didn't do it.
Right.
Would she want her husband being held responsible for her death if he didn't do it?
Right.
Like, I think people get really attached, and me too. Like, for a long time I was like, fuck Scott Peterson, and I still am. Like, I think he's a
scumbag.
Guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But like, I was just so angry and so emotional. And that's the thing that's hard with true crime, especially as a spectator versus being actually educated on it and working in the courts or in law somewhere. You have a different understanding of it. But, you know, as just a spectator to all this, you're just emotional and you just want to see someone go down for it. And here's this guy is cheating on his beautiful pregnant wife and doesn't seem to show any emotion and doesn't like call the family. I mean, he did so many things that just rub me the wrong way. But at the end of the day, I know I can't say I'm 100% sure that he actually killed her. Right. You have to be sure about something like that.
There's no physical or forensic evidence to suggest that he did.
And then seeing these other possibilities, I mean, there were actually 7 pregnant women, including Laci, that disappeared from that area within 80 miles of Modesto in that 6 months. And obviously we talked about Evelyn specifically, but there's multiple possibilities here. I mean, this easily could have been something else, some random act of violence, some group that still might be out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think there's
scary.
It's the horrifying part is that none of those leads were chased down. None of them were investigated. We have no clue. I mean, for all we know, if the police actually went down that road, they might have solved it.
Yeah.
They might have actually, if they had not just done what the media wanted them to do pretty much, then perhaps this would be a solved case and we would know the truth about what happened to Laci and Connor.
And maybe if they did a better job of investigating, they would have actually found some more evidence that Scott did it. Like, I'm just saying they need to do a better job of investigating all possibilities in total, you know?
Yeah. And I feel like this happens way too much where they just don't, you know, they don't do enough.
They want to like wrap it up. And I think that's so true what you said about the media pressure. I think they were feeling that. I mean, this is being covered on Larry King every night. It was like national news. People are following this. Like,
they don't want to look incompetent. They don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing. They want to look like we're bringing justice swift. We're doing what the family wants. It's almost a PR thing for them. They want good PR. They want to look like we're a great police department. We're here getting justice for victims. And in reality, though, like they're not actually doing an investigation. They just literally, you know, because he had a boat, because she ended up in the bay, boom, boom, there we go. That's the answer. But it's physically impossible. Like that boat is tiny. How did he like in the event that he did do it? That must have been like he must have really planned that out and known ahead of time and like,
or it was really good luck that he didn't tip the boat
and nobody happened to see him with a body in there.
There's too many things. There's too many things.
There's just too many questions to convict somebody or even give them a life sentence because of this, unfortunately. Like, and I hate saying that because I want to see somebody, you know, brought to justice.
Obviously, we all do, but it's like you don't want the wrong person.
But yeah, that's the thing is you don't want innocent people on death row. You don't want innocent people serving life in prison where their life is taken from them. In San Quentin, I can't even imagine the hell that is every day.
And I just want to make it clear that by thinking about this more critically and questioning Scott, you're in no way disrespecting Laci at all. Like I said, she would want the truth out there as well. So if there's a possibility that we don't have the truth, I'm sure she would want us to look into it and think and question it. Like, I think a lot of people think that if you're somehow, like if you question Scott's innocence or guilt,
law enforcement,
that you are like against Laci.
It's not true at all. Criminal justice comes back to truth. What is the truth about what happened to the individual?
There's only one truth, and don't we want that?
And unfortunately, you know, like you can't always trust law enforcement. You can't always trust the media. You can't always trust these entities that are telling you what happened. And in this case, it's very, very clear. There's just, where's the evidence? Show us the physical evidence. Where's the hard proof that confirms that Scott did this? And there's just not, it's not there. So if it's not there, then it's somewhere else. There's proof somewhere else. The tape on Connor, please explain that to me. Anybody.
That's
like,
weird.
Where did that come from? And don't tell me it just floats off of one body and attaches to another. That's like impossible.
That's what they say.
Like, I don't believe that at all. I think that she was not dumped out in the middle of the bay. I think she was dumped on the shore of the bay, perhaps off of a cliff area even. And, you know, they thought, okay, she'll just, you know, go to the bottom of that area. I'm sure there's drop off areas where, you know, you can just drop somebody there and they go to the bottom. And then, you know, over time she floated to the top. But I just don't see how it's physically possible for Scott to have pulled this off the way that he did with the timelines that we have.
He did.
Right. In the ways that law enforcement said, with all these witnesses claiming that she was alive when he would have been going to dump her body and she would have been dead in his truck. And the
computer searches.
Right.
Definitely that. The Martha Stewart thing. I mean, there's just so many things.
There's absolutely so. I mean, we could sit here for hours and debate about this. I mean, we're already a few hours into this. So
yeah, we really want to hear your guys' thoughts though. We know that there's so many different opinions on this case and we respect everyone's opinion. So we want to hear what you think.
And we respect the family and, you know, we understand that this is hard and
this is,
and it's extremely painful
for them. Yeah, I know.
But at the end of the day, I think the truth is the most important thing here. And hopefully we get that one day.
I agree.
But with that being said, we will go ahead and wrap up today's episode there. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode and hopefully you're just as, you know, flustered and, you know, in your head about what happened as we are. I mean, this is one of those cases that will keep you up at night. It'll definitely make you think about all the scenarios here. So be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, and follow on Spotify. We'd really appreciate it. But until next time, stay safe
and stay well.